sad story, but we can't lose sight of the fact as to what happened and whether or not it was legally justified or not, and whether it was a violation of any criminal laws. The whys and the wherefores and how can we prevent things in the future is an entirely different matter. And I hope that all doesn't get lost in this evaluation. What's striking from the very outset is that this investigation, which was intensive, took 2 months. Historically, the city of Cleveland, under this mayor and other mayors, have taken over a year because of all the politics. This was a straightforward investigation. All the officers cooperated. They had nothing to hide. And I think it's fair to say that we need to zero in on the conduct of the 2 suspects in the vehicle that the officers were responding to. And when you look at that, you'll find that they were acting in a manner which men and women, Hispanics and Caucasians, interpreted that as they were pointing a weapon at us, brandishing a weapon at police officers. That's not some fairy tale. The officers responded. When they responded in that 1-minute time frame when the car ultimately was trapped, what happened? The driver of the car tried to run over numerous police officers. He intentionally rammed other patrol cars, and officers were in fear of their life, and they did what they were trained to do. They fired their weapons. They were legally justified. And I hope that all doesn't get lost in the politics of anytime we have a police shooting. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I believe from the outset, and I feel firm about it right now after having listened to everything and having been present for all the interviews, that at the end of the day, this will be a legally justified shooting, however tragic. But again, let me also point out, I listened quite carefully to all the questions asked of the media. These events occur time and time again. The problem is not the police department. Whatever systemic failures occurred are minuscule in relationship to conduct of individuals in our society that make police react in certain ways. Conduct of individuals who try to run over police officers. Conduct of individuals who try to ram police cars. Conduct of individuals who either shoot their weapons at police officers or pretend that they have guns and that they are shooting at police officers. We recently had one officer shot in the chest. A bulletproof vest saved him. 60 cars, I believe, responded in that setting. So is the story here, at the end of the day, the pursuit policy says 2 cars, and so therefore if we have a bank robbery and we have 3 or 4 gunmen shooting it up, that only 2 police cars can respond and pursue that person, or do we just let them drive away? So these are the issues that I think we as a society need to look at, and we need to look at what type of response do we have from our politicians. Do we start addressing the conduct and behavior of residents in the community that behave in this lawless manner? Or are we going to stand up and have news conferences and poke holes at the police, who are human beings, who have an instant to make a decision? And we have, again, I was here for all these interviews, at least 5 or 6 officers claiming that they observed a weapon, okay? There's no evidence whatsoever that there was any racial animus in this particular case. All officers testified that everyone was under control. There were no racial epithets uttered by anyone. So at the end of the day, I hope we don't lose sight of the fact as to what this case is about. It's a review of whether or not the police use of deadly force was legally justified. And by all reasonable accounts, it clearly was. We had a police supervisor, Patricia Coleman from the 2nd District, who was actively involved in a pursuit and behind the suspect vehicle at one point. She transmitted on radio that she observed the occupants going as if they were reloading or loading a weapon. Now, you know, what Sergeant Daly would have to say, who was the sector supervisor, is beyond me. He wasn't there to make that observation. So at the end of the day, I believe this will be ruled justifiable. But in the process, I got to admit that I'm a little bit upset because we're talking about all these touchy-feely issues about how the system let these officers down. These officers responded instantly, and they responded in good faith. If they should have been called off by some higher being, or if we should have had these spikes, if we should have had a helicopter, that's not the patrol officer's fault. They were the ones that were responding to a situation where they felt guns were pointed at them, and they reacted in a good faith. And yes, it's a tragedy, but at the end of the day, the actions of the 2 occupants of this motor vehicle caused what ultimately happened here, not some systemic breakdown. breakdown. And unless, as a society, we come to deal with that cold, stark reality, these events are going to keep repeating themselves because, again, ride through the city of Cleveland and tell me what you see. Tell me how many of you want to move into the city of Cleveland and raise your family there, send your kids to school there, okay, and not fear for your life or feel that you're going to run into the likes of the two suspects in this motor vehicle. That's the tragedy in this particular case, that we're missing that type of conduct, that type of behavior, and now focusing in on the police, how they let everyone down. That's not the case. So that's my editorial comment.
Might systemic changes, though, if they make officers safer?
Listen, whether it's in football or whether it's in hospitals or in police departments, you always want to try to make the system better. But it doesn't mean that if something happens, the hospital personnel should be prosecuted for bad outcomes. It doesn't mean that we should prosecute anyone else in the media or anyone else for systemic breakdowns. In this particular case, these officers literally were fighting for their lives. And for right-minded people not to see that and understand it is astounding.
But Pat, they were fighting for their lives because they were shooting at each other. And I think that that's the policy thing that people are asking questions about. Why were there so many officers in that lot? You know, why weren't those policies followed? I think what the Attorney General said was that should there not have been so many people in that lot and the pursuit conducted the way it was, the officers wouldn't have been putting each other's lives in danger as well.
I understand that, but that doesn't necessarily follow. Again, these are police officers responding to what they believe is an active shooter. The Attorney General did not say that the occupants of the vehicle did not have a weapon or did not fire. He said the scientific evidence in this case is consistent with they had weapons and fired or they didn't have weapons, and it was the fire from the officers. So we don't know that to be the case. But yes, I will concede that when you look at the number of police cars and the way everything came down, it resulted in friendly fire or crossfire as part of this whole situation. But things happen, and when they're rapidly unfolding, when a driver is fleeing the police and trying to run over police officers, and police officers are running for cover and diving to get out of the way for fear of being run over, you have to respond to that. And if you don't, maybe we're here with an officer being run over who was crushed by the vehicle and killed. I don't need to tell you who I would feel more sorry for that we're here today, the officer or the two occupants of this car. And I don't say that without any type of thought given to it, but you know, we need to get real with the realities involved. I appreciate what you're saying, and I do understand the issue of systemic failures and training and all that, but sometimes things happen, and you just have to deal with it. Yes, hopefully there's a better way where the system will unfold or controls will occur where not that many cars respond, but sometimes things happen, and how do we deal with it? How do we respond to it? We blame the system. We're going to blame the supervisors in this case. I didn't hear anyone say that, hey, wait a minute, we shouldn't be pursuing this. This is wrong. You guys are crazy. You guys are overreacting. So we have a lot of people. There were African American officers involved in this pursuit. There were females involved in this pursuit. I pointed out to your newspaper that one of the officers who fired was female. She unloaded her weapon. When it was reported, that wasn't mentioned because at the time we're talking about the 13 white officers firing, okay? And we got the calls from the NAACP. We got the calls from everyone else about how this is somehow racially motivated. That was never the case. So